Ahmad, and I'm going to be a sophomore in high school. And today I'm going to be talking to you all about teen smoking prevention, specifically an act that was passed nationally by President Obama on June 22nd, 2009, with a goal of basically preventing teens from starting to smoke at such a young age before they know how deep the effects will be on the rest of their life. And this act is called the Family Prevention and Tobacco Control Act. So my presentation is split into three main parts. The first part is the provisions of the act, what the act says and what it does. The second part is the public and corporate response, both positive and negative. And then the third part is beyond the act, like cessation of tobacco in the near future on the horizon. So just some background information. Like I said, this act was signed nationally by President Obama on June 22nd, 2009. And here you can, in the picture, you can see him signing the act surrounded by supporters. And this act is nicknamed the Tobacco Control Act because it basically gives the FDA complete power to regulate the tobacco industry. And one of the key provisions of the act is that it requires warning labels that cover 50% of the front and back of all tobacco products. Okay, before I get to legislative history, I just want to give everyone an overview of the goal of the act. So the main goal of the act is basically to protect the public health of our whole nation, but it's really focusing on teens and adolescents under age 18 who are starting so young and not really knowing the deep effects and how it will really affect the rest of their life. So now onto the legislative history. This act was introduced first into the House of Representatives in March 2009, and then the House Committee of Energy and Commerce looked at the act and passed it, so it went into the House of Representatives, and then they officially passed it in April 2009. Then it went on to the Senate. Most of the Senate approved it, but there was some opposition, mainly in the southern states, where a lot of their economy is rooted on tobacco farming, so an act like this could really mess up their economy. So it was officially passed by the Senate on June 11, 2009. The Senate changed the act a bit, so the House approved their revised version. And then President Obama, who actually struggled with smoking himself, signed this act on June 22nd, 2009. Okay, now on to some of the main provisions of the act. So the one provision that's kind of paramount over the others is that this act gives the FDA complete power over the whole tobacco industry to market, distribute, regulate, and manufacture tobacco products in order to improve the public health of our nation. So basically, the FDA can pretty much control the whole tobacco industry, and one of the key things involving the FDA is that tobacco companies now need to run by new products by the FDA if they want to introduce a new product into the market, so they can no longer sneak in products that could be really detrimental. Also, companies now need to reveal all of the ingredients for their products, and the act also creates a certain part of the FDA, a certain center in the FDA that will really focus on tobacco prevention. And another key thing I mentioned before is that 50% of the front and back of the packages now need to be covered with these specific warning labels. Okay. Some more provisions are that this act bans the sale of packages of cigarettes fewer than 20 in a package. It also limits the sale of tobacco and cigarettes to face-to-face interaction, so only through consumers where you're exchanging it face-to-face. And it also limits advertising using words such as light and ultralight. These words give the impression that products are healthier and better for you when they're actually just as bad. And a really important thing is in regards to tobacco companies and the effect on them. It bans the tobacco industry from sponsoring major sporting or entertainment events, which is really a loss for the companies because they gain a lot of new customers through these ads by making it look attractive. Okay, so the goals of the act. Well, like I said before, this act basically attempts prevent teens and adolescents from starting to smoke at such a young age before they know the gravity of the effects and how it will really affect their life when they're older. And it does this by giving the FDA complete power over the tobacco industry and also by imposing new rules like larger warning labels. Okay, some of the impacts and the effects. So this act really ushered a new era of tobacco control by recognizing that pretty much all smokers start under the age of 18, start using tobacco under 18, the legal age. And by giving the FDA complete authority when it comes to these products, hopefully this will decrease the large number of people starting so young. And in regards to the effect on the tobacco industry, it makes it much harder for them to advertise their products because there are all these restrictions on when and where they can advertise. It also makes it much more difficult for tobacco companies to put new products into the market because the FDA is really going to scrutinize these new products coming in. It won't be that easy for companies to put in new products. And also companies need to reveal all of their ingredients in the products, which could unattract some smokers. Okay, so these are 9 textual warnings that were supposedly supposed to be on all packages as of September 2012. I'm not going to mention all of these, you can just look through them, but they're basically all in regards to the health effects and how quitting will really benefit your health. And actually, I'm pretty sure that these were not implemented in the way that they were expected to be. Definitely not all 9 of these are on every single package. And they wanted them to be in really large print, and that didn't really happen either. And I'll talk about that in more detail, why the act hasn't been implemented fully on the next slide. Okay, so the FDA has some limitations on their power. And this is really the reason why the act hasn't been implemented fully and why it's been challenging to implement it. So the FDA can't ban certain specified classes of products. They can't ban any type of face-to-face sale. They can't make prescription required for purchase of dangerous products. And they also need to keep nicotine yields at the same amount. So even though these may seem like small things, they're actually what has caused the act to not be implemented in the way. And it's been really challenging for it to be implemented, and why most people, including myself, haven't. I didn't even hear of the act before I researched it, and it's probably why most people haven't heard of the act. Okay, so the second part of the presentation is public and corporate response. So both positive and negative reception to the act. So first, positive reception and support. This act was supported by many major health organizations, including the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. Both of their CEOs made statements praising the act for what it was trying to do. The CEO of the American Heart Association stated that the bill provides a tremendous opportunity to finally hold tobacco companies responsible and restricts the efforts to addict more children and adults. And then the CEO of the American Cancer Society noted that this bill forces big tobacco, as in big tobacco companies, to disclose the poisons in its products and has the power to finally break the dangerous chain of addiction for generations to come. So you can see that these two really powerful CEOs are really praising the act on how it's taking a stand against this problem of people starting so young. And this CEO is basically saying that this chain will keep growing if people don't take a stand against it. Okay, on the other hand, there was also some negative reception. Some people think that this act is ineffectual in helping public health for our nation. For example, Michael Siegel, who is a Boston University Community Health Sciences professor, stated that it creates the appearance of regulation without actual regulation. So he's saying that they make it seem like they're going to be able to regulate the tobacco industry, but he doesn't actually think that this act will be able to regulate it. And also, many companies are complaining on how there's so many marketing restrictions. These companies are trying to advertise safer alternatives, and that makes it hard for them to do that. Okay, Marlboro is the biggest producer of cigarettes in the country. So they're really powerful, and they have tons of money. So this act actually helps them, because other companies don't have as much power. Since they have so much power, they can hire people to try to get away from these regulations of the act, and other companies can't really do that. So this eliminates potential competition for them. So that's why it was nicknamed the Marlboro Monopoly Act of 2009. Okay, some additional negative reception. Commonwealth Brands, a big consumer brand, claimed that some of the restrictions in the act could infringe upon the First Amendment, including restricting advertisement of black and white text, restricting companies from advertising lights, prohibiting advertisement within 1,000 feet of where children could congregate, banning sponsorship by companies, and prohibiting free samples. So as you can see, a lot of these things have to do with the advertising and marketing of products. Okay, now on to the third part of the presentation, things beyond the act, tobacco cessation efforts in the near future. So I'm just going to talk about some tobacco bans in the U.S. Nearly 81% of Americans live under some type of smoking ban, and 49% live under a ban in all restaurants, bars, and workplaces. And 60 of our country's most populated cities have enacted laws that make smoking illegal in all enclosed public areas. But 16 of the biggest cities, including Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, are not included in this number. And then 28 states have enacted bans in all enclosed public areas, and there are various restrictions depending on the city. Okay, so how does Pennsylvania compare to this? Pennsylvania is not part of the 28 states, including Washington and D.C. and Puerto Rico, that have banned smoking in all enclosed public areas. And the version that Pennsylvania has is more lenient. So smoking in most indoor public areas is illegal, but not in adult-only facilities such as bars and casinos. And this is just in more detail for the restrictions. So as of September 2008, smoking is prohibited in all indoor public areas except in, and I'm not going to go through these, you can just read these quickly, but 12 is a large number, so that's part of the reason why in Pennsylvania is not part of the 28 states where smoking in all indoor enclosed public areas is illegal. And this is just to sum everything up. So the Family Prevention Tobacco Control Act is a very important piece of legislation in our government to limit exposure of youth to tobacco. However, complete implementation for this act has been quite the challenge. And because it's so difficult to stop smoking, continued efforts should be made on focusing on prevention. And I hope that in preventing my peers in my generation from starting to smoke, tremendous strides can be made in public health. And then just to end, I kind of came up with this little quote that I made up that I think kind of summarizes what the act is trying to say. It's trying to prevent people from really starting to smoke. So this is where I'm going to end on. The best way to stop is to never start. And then these are my sources.
All right, thanks. Any questions?